He slammed his fist on the table. Silverware rattled. Voices fell silent. The billionaire was furious. But the waitress? Calm, quiet, and hiding a secret that could ruin him. In just one sentence, she turned the entire room on its head. And what she said, no one saw it coming. The front door flew open with a jarring clang of brass against wood. Conversations halted. Forks froze midair. A gust of humid summer wind swept in behind him. But it was the man himself who pulled the air out of the room. He moved with purpose. No pause, no glance at the menu, not even a flicker of acknowledgement to the host trying to greet him. Richard Langford. The name alone was enough to make people straighten their backs. Dressed in a crisp charcoal suit with cufflinks that caught the light like diamonds, he carried the kind of aura money couldn't buy. It had to be feared into existence. He didn't sit. He claimed a table near the window, draping his coat over the neighboring chair like he owned the building. A couple nearby exchanged nervous glances and quietly pushed their plates aside. The tension was thick, clinging to the walls like steam. Ella Martinez noticed, but didn't react. She was by the espresso machine, wiping down mugs that didn't need cleaning. Her eyes flicked toward the corner of the room. She recognized him instantly. Of course she did. But she didn't flinch. Not even when her manager, Paul, hissed her name under his breath. Ella, table 9. Now, she tied her apron tighter, more to calm her nerves than anything else, and walked over. Her steps were steady, the kind you take when you've learned that running never helps. When she reached the table, Richard was still on his phone, barking into it like someone had ruined his entire day. No, listen to me, he snapped. You tell them if the numbers don't come through by tonight, the deal's off. I don't care how long they've been with us. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Every word felt like it could cut glass. Ella waited patiently. Not submissive, present. It was a skill. She stood just far enough to respect his space, just close enough to be noticed. Richard finally looked up. His eyes scanned her like she was a spreadsheet he didn't like. I'll take an Americano. Hot. No sugar. And make sure it's fresh. I don't drink burnt beans. His tone wasn't cruel, just dismissive. Like he assumed she'd mess it up before she even tried. Ella gave a short nod, coming right up. She didn't smile, but her voice was even polite. Not cold, just practiced, like someone who had played this scene 100 times before. As she turned away, Richard muttered under his breath, just loud enough to be heard. God, this city's full of amateurs. Paul, watching from behind the counter, motioned for her to let it go. Ella didn't even glance at him, but something inside her stirred, just a flicker. She didn't show it. Not yet. Because Richard Langford might have walked in like he owned the place. But he didn't know her. Not really. And that was his first mistake. Ella moved behind the counter with quiet precision, scooping fresh grounds into the espresso machine. The hiss of steam and the gentle clink of ceramic cups filled the space around her. To anyone watching, she was just doing her job. But inside, she was sorting through noise much louder than the cafe soundtrack. Paul leaned in, whispering low. He's a regular at those uptown steakhouses. Why is he slumming it down here? Ella didn't look up. Maybe he's lost. Paul chuckled nervously, already regretting it. Just be careful. People like him? One complaint and we're all in trouble. She nodded, even though she hated that word, careful. It meant swallow the insult. Smile through it. Let them win. The machine clicked. Coffee poured. As she placed the Americano on the tray, her hand hesitated just briefly. She wasn't nervous about the order. No, this was something else. The weight in her chest had nothing to do with caffeine. She remembered that face, that name, Richard Langford. The same man who appeared on glossy magazine covers and gave inspirational TED-style speeches about impact investing. The same name printed at the bottom of a plaque in the group home where her brother was taken in. A plaque no one noticed once the roof started leaking and the counselors started quitting. Ella pushed the memory aside. She carried the cup to his table. Americano. No sugar, just like you asked. Richard gave it a cursory glance, then took a sip. No compliment. No thank you. Just the tiniest grimace, whether from bitterness or ego, she couldn't tell. He looked up again, scanning her face for the first time with something closer to curiosity than contempt. "You new here?" Ella shook her head. "For years." "Huh." He leaned back in his chair. "This place must not pay well." His words weren't cruel. Not quite. Just tossed out like a casual insult dressed as small talk. Ella didn't answer. Richard turned his eyes back to the street, muttering something about people wasting potential. But Ella? She stood there for one more second, her expression unreadable, until her eyes flicked downward toward his hands. No wedding ring. Expensive watch. That same leather folder he always carried in media interviews. He was the same, but she wasn't. "Let me know if you need anything else," she said, voice even. She turned to walk away, but inside, her thoughts whispered louder than any voice. "He doesn't even recognize me, but I remember everything." The cafe had settled back into its rhythm. Clinking cutlery, casual murmurs, the occasional laugh from a corner booth. Ella had just started clearing a nearby table when she heard the sharp clatter. Richard's coffee cup hit the edge of his saucer with a force that made the ceramic ring out like a warning bell. He waved her over, 2 fingers, impatient like summoning a cab. She walked back, calm on the outside. "Yes, this," he said, holding up the cup, "is cold." "It was hot when I served it," she replied politely. Richard narrowed his eyes. "So I'm lying now?" She held his gaze. "No, sir. Just letting you know I brewed it fresh, as you asked." He laughed, a short, dry sound that had nothing to do with humor. Unbelievable. A waitress arguing over a cup of coffee. "Where do they find you people?" Ella's jaw tightened. Behind her, Paul saw the tension and rushed over, forcing a smile. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Langford." "Ella, why don't you take a break?" "I'll handle this." Ella didn't move. Richard's voice sharpened. "If I wanted burnt beans and attitude, I'd have stayed at the airport lounge." Paul turned to her. "Ella, please, just apologize and get him another. Let's not make this a thing." She looked at Paul, at the fear in his eyes, the pleading, and then at Richard, so smug, so sure of his place in the world. The words were there, heavy in her throat, but she stayed silent, not because she was afraid, but because she was waiting for the moment to speak with intention, not reaction. She picked up the cup and said evenly, "I'll get you another." As she turned, Richard muttered, just loud enough, "They hand out jobs to anyone these days, huh?" She stopped walking. For 1 second, 1 breath, the cup trembled slightly in her hand. Then she kept moving. But inside, the shift had begun. Not anger, focus. The kind that builds not in explosions, but in silence. The kind of calm that only exists before a storm. She was done playing the background. He had no idea who she was, but he was about to find out. Back behind the counter, Ella remade the drink with steady hands, but her chest felt tight, like a string pulled too hard. She wasn't shaking, not anymore. That moment passed. Now, there was only clarity. She could hear Richard's voice drifting through the air again, this time louder. He was on the phone. Again. "Tell legal I'm not covering for anyone. If their numbers don't hold up, they're gone. All of them. I don't care how long they've been loyal." He wasn't hiding it. He didn't need to. That's what power does. It makes you believe you're untouchable. Ella set the second Americano on the tray and walked it back to him, weaving through a path of cautious glances and forced smiles from the other staff. Everyone was pretending things were fine. They weren't. "Here's your coffee," she said softly, placing the cup down with care. Richard didn't say thanks. He didn't look at her, until she started to turn away. "You know," he called out, "you should really take some business classes. Learn how to handle customers with real expectations." She stopped mid-step. A pause. A long, heavy silence. Ella turned back, her face unreadable, but her eyes locked with his. "I actually studied business," she said, tone neutral. "Top of my class." Richard raised an eyebrow, mocking amusement curling on his lips. "Really? And this is where you landed?" Ella tilted her head slightly. Life's not always linear. A beat passed. For the first time, he seemed intrigued. Not respectful, not kind, but interested. In that arrogant way certain men become when they think a woman's hiding a challenge. The moment could have ended there. But Ella's eyes dropped for a second to the folder sitting beside him. The one with his logo embossed in gold. She knew that logo. It was seared into her memory. On donation plaques, on newsletters, on the last report from the group home before everything went wrong. That folder, that man, had been part of it all. Her brother's file had that logo printed in the top right corner. Suddenly, it wasn't just about class or coffee or pride. It was personal. But Richard didn't recognize her. Not yet. To him, she was just a waitress with a sharp mouth and a borrowed degree. He smiled smug. Keep at it. Who knows? You might even get a desk someday. Ella nodded slowly. Maybe. Or maybe I'll just wait until people start recognizing me instead. It sounded harmless, but something in her voice made him blink. Something that said, you have no idea what's coming. Time slowed. The cafe faded into a blur of movement and muffled sound. Ella stood still, her heart drumming not from fear, but from resolve. She had waited long enough. Too many years. Too many times swallowing the urge to speak. But now, it wasn't just about defending herself. It was about truth. Richard reached for his cup again, casually, like the world was still spinning in his favor. You're not like the rest, he said. I'll give you that. Ella didn't move. Her voice, when it came, was low and steady. You funded the Edison Youth Initiative, didn't you? He looked up, confused at first. Years ago, yeah. That was a tax write-off. Why? Ella stepped forward. Her tone didn't change. But her eyes? They burned. My brother was there. Isaiah Martinez. There was silence. Pure, clean silence. The kind that clears a room without a sound. Richard blinked. He was placed in the group home under that program, she continued, not blinking. 6 months after your foundation streamlined operations, the staff was cut in half. The therapist quit. Isaiah fell through the cracks. And no one, not one person, followed up. She wasn't raising her voice. She didn't need to. You probably don't remember that name, she said. But I remember yours. It was printed in gold on the file folder they handed me the day I had to sign him over to state custody. Richard leaned back slightly. His confidence, the polished armor he wore so easily, was cracking. Fast. I had no idea, he started. No, Ella said softly. You didn't. Because men like you write checks and walk away. But for people like us, the damage stays. The cafe was quiet. Not out of shock, but respect. People were listening now, even if they didn't fully understand. Richard's jaw tightened. Look, No, she interrupted, voice calm. Don't apologize. That's not why I told you. He swallowed hard, suddenly unsure of his footing. For once, he was the one being studied, held accountable, not by a protest or a lawsuit, but by a waitress in a dusty apron with nothing left to lose. You asked me why I'm still here, she said. Because every day I show up, I remember who I'm fighting for. She didn't wait for his response. She turned and walked away, shoulders squared, the weight of her past no longer dragging behind her, but carried with purpose. Richard didn't speak. Not right away. He sat there, one hand still on the warm cup, but not drinking. The edges of his bravado had crumbled, like plaster peeling away to reveal something raw underneath. Ella didn't look back. She walked toward the back counter, pausing only when Paul appeared beside her. Are you okay? He asked quietly, his voice filled with something that sounded like fear and awe. Ella nodded, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Yeah, I think I finally am. Before Paul could say more, footsteps approached. Richard stood by the counter, not demanding, not towering, just present. No longer the man who barked into phones and gave half glances to service workers. His tone when he spoke was quieter now. Cautious. Ella, he said. She turned to face him. There was no anger in her eyes, just patience, steel wrapped in grace. I didn't know, he said. I never looked at where the money really went. I thought writing checks was enough. It never is, she replied. Calm, firm. He nodded, the weight of shame settling on him like a long-forgotten coat. I want to fix this. You can't fix the past, she said, but you can do better with what you still have. Another pause. Richard pulled out a business card, sleek, heavy stock, and slid it across the counter. "This isn't a handout," he said. "But if you ever want to start something real change, I'll fund it." Quietly. No PR. No speeches. Ella looked at the card, then back at him. "I don't want your name on anything." He nodded again, slower this time. "Fair." Then he offered something unexpected, a faint, humbled smile, and walked out, leaving only the soft swing of the door behind him. Paul stared. What just happened? Ella picked up the business card, studied it for a moment, then placed it in the tip jar without a word. And for the first time in a long time, she let herself breathe. Not because the battle was over, but because for once she had drawn the line and the world had to meet her there. The afternoon sun slid across the cafe windows, softening the space in golden light. Dishes clinked. A baby laughed somewhere near the front. The world kept spinning like nothing had happened. But everything had. Ella wiped down the same table she'd cleaned earlier that morning. Only this time, her shoulders weren't heavy. Her movements weren't mechanical. She wasn't just surviving another shift. She was present. Paul approached slowly, holding the business card she'd tossed into the tip jar earlier. "You sure you don't want this?" he asked. Ella smiled, gently. "Let someone else use it. Someone who needs a door opened." He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "You were incredible today," he said. She shook her head. "No, I just stopped being quiet." At a corner table, an older woman who'd watched the whole thing caught Ella's eye. She offered a tiny nod, nothing big. Just quiet respect. It meant more than applause ever could. Ella tucked her towel into her apron and looked out the window, where the black car had once been. Gone now. Just street noise and the smell of coffee. But something had stayed behind. Not Richard's card. Not his donation. Not even his regret. Her voice. The one she thought she lost. The one buried under years of guilt and silence. The one she used, not to destroy, but to be heard. And it was just one sentence. But it changed everything.